Dear colleagues, dear students, dear guests, dear Audrey Tang, of course. As the Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences of the University of Zurich that hosts the Right Livelihood Center at our university, I am happy to welcome you to this very special evening at our university. We are privileged to have with us today Audrey Tang, the winner of the 2025 Right Livelihood Award, also referred to as the Alternative Nobel Prize for achievements relating to practical solutions to global problems. We are honored and excited that she has accepted to be the speaker of our Right Livelihood lecture today. Audrey Tang's vita is overwhelming, and we will hear about it later. Let me say only one thing in this respect. While she developed her extraordinary innovative capacity widely outside the formal system of education, her successful approach to combine scientific excellence with the art of politics and a deep civic motivation for people's empowerment and a strengthening of democracy is exemplary for what we would also love our students to take away from their studies at our university. Of course, we do not expect every student now to graduate at the age of 14, like Audrey Tang, starting her own firm at the age of 19 and becoming a minister at the age of 41, on top of that, for a totally new portfolio whose relevance she previously demonstrated to the existing government. Now, Audrey Tang works at the Faculty of Philosophy at Oxford. How fitting, I'm also representing a Faculty of Philosophy, in the field of ethics in AI. And at our university, and also within our faculty, many of us with different perspectives, for instance, from history, from computing, from arts, from political science, from languages, or communication and media sciences, and many more, and also ethics, of course, are highly interested in what we are going to hear from you today. And I guess you see that in how full the room is, and we've just discussed that. Many others would have liked to come and unfortunately couldn't fit in anymore. I think here at the university, we also have a number of people, researchers and students alike, who are struggling to find new solutions, making technology work in favor of, rather than against, democracy, and more broadly in favor of, rather than against, humankind. And we hope that some of this engagement and some of the aspiration to improve the world, be it by little steps, will not just remain at the level of researchers and professors, but also trickle down through the studies to our students. For them, as well as for our research community, Audrey Tang can be a great inspiration. Seeing how she succeeded raises hopes that such things can also work elsewhere and in the future. Audrey Tang, we thank you very much for honoring us today with your lecture. And thank you also to the Right Livelihood Center at our university for making this possible. And of course, as well, for the ongoing activities such as the lecture series Sustainability Now that help us not to overlook the broader social perspectives, if not to say the broader purpose of all our work and studies. Thank you.
Vielen Dank, Katharina, für diese schönen Worte. Wir werden jetzt einen kurzen Film über alle 4 bzw. 5 Preisträgerinnen sehen und dann die Lecture von Audrey Tang hören. Nach dem Vortrag folgt ein Gespräch mit Adrienne Fichter, mehrfach preisgekrönte Tech-Journalistin der Republik, die Aline Ihnen vorstellen wird. Und nach dem Gespräch wird Ole von Uexküll den Abend hier in der Aula beenden und Sie alle zum Apéro im Lichthof einladen. before I hand over to the screening and the lecture, I would like to say a few words about Audrey Tang as well. I'm delighted that you are here with us this evening because not only is your work extremely important, but you are also a very positive and humorous person. Humor instead of rumors is one of your motto. In an interview, you said, think of something that is funny, spreads quickly, and takes the oxygen out of polarization. And I think in a world characterized by general fear, doomsday scenarios, and dystopias, humor has taken on enormous political significance. This also applies to the field of new technologies, which are often perceived only as threatening. I'm now very much looking forward to your presentation and will give you the floor after the film without further ado. Thank you.
Courage is choosing to fight, even when all the odds are against you.
A willingness to take on cases that you know you might lose, but that need to be fought.
The strength to speak truth to power, and the resolve to turn fear into action, which the people of Myanmar embody daily.
The ability to exercise civic care, even in adversarial situations where isolation seems to be the norm.
Courage is to never give up.
Choosing to stay with your community when it's easier to run away.
A world that is safe, and that my children get to experience the same childhood that I experienced and get to live on the ancestral lands of their choosing.
A world that is more verdant, just, and joyful.
A peaceful, federal, democratic Myanmar, free from tyranny and the grip of the military cartel.
A world where technology leaves no one behind and is shaped by everyone that is affected by it.
A Sudan where the war stops.
A world where solidarity is in the front.
Gelukosheim, Zurich. It is a great honor to be speaking with you as the 2025 Right Livelihood Laureate. First, let me reflect on what brings us together today, right livelihood. It's not a list of permitted professions or some bound moral rule. It is a dynamic practice, a way of engaging with the world, as we have seen in the short clip, that makes us working on the field bound by curiosity, by collaboration, and civic care. His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, wrote, and I quote, "In order to carry a positive action, we must develop here a positive vision. It is under the greatest adversity that there exists the greatest potential for doing good, both for oneself and the others." Now, we're arriving at an age in time of intense pressure. We have seen climate crisis, social polarization, democracy backsliding around the globe. So you can feel really that the adversity, the darkness is closing in. But as the Dalai Lama teaches us, right livelihood thrives on adversity, offering hope in the form of light, light that shines through the cracks, light that illuminates opportunities for real change and lasting change. And this brings me to a personal story about a crack. When I was 5 years old, doctor told me and my parents that this child only have a 50-50 chance to survive until surgery, which I got when I was 12. But for the first few years of my life, every night before lights out felt like a coin toss. So this instilled in me an urgency, what I call publish before I perish. Essentially, I recorded everything that I learned during the day. First, on cassette tapes. Many of you don't know what that is anymore. Floppy disks. Okay, a few more. And then finally, the internet. The internet is still around. And along the way, I discovered something profound. If you publish something perfect on the internet, people just click like, and then they scroll away. But if you publish something imperfect on the internet, everybody comes out and argue with you. But it's actually a blessing. I made my friends this way. Something rich in vulnerabilities, in half-formed thoughts. Those cracks are invitations for participation. So people correct me, of course, but they also engage and co-create. As the late, great Leonard Cohen wrote, "Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. And that's how the light gets in." For democracies, this really is key. We must see the cracks in our societies, broken trust, polarization, environmental cracks, not as reasons for despair, but as invitations for collaboration, those opening for light. We must treat these fractures not with cynicism, but with salves of goodness. And this is the treatment prescribed by right livelihood. So let me talk about the Max OS. This is one of the cracks in our world that is felt very much here. The dominant logic of our digital age is that of utilitarianism, consequentialism, optimization, maximization. Find a number, any number, and make a number the biggest number in the world. So for example, on social media, we see algorithms trying to maximize the time we spend on touch screens. So when this Max OS is applied to the realm of human relationships, it leads to catastrophic results. Around 10 years ago, many social media platforms switched from simple feeds, where we saw the content of the people we commonly follow, and then we see the same world, into what's called a parasitic recommendation engine. It feeds our divisions, our differences, and then maximize engagement through enragement. And the outrage brought a very high ppm environment. I don't mean parts per million CO2, as you see. I mean polarization per minute. Because if you see a content online that builds relationship, we can reflect on it, we go offline, we have a real conversation, a flesh and blood discussion. So we won't stay glued to the screen. But if we see something that attacks our values, fuels division, amplifies extreme, then it sparks outrage, and then we're hooked, addicted to the screen, and ready to fight. And that environment of very high ppm makes the authoritarianism very easy to exploit our differences. It used to be that we can take collective action against tyranny, against authoritarianism. But in a very high ppm environment, we're fractured into hundreds of small differences, making collective action very, very difficult. And that is the opposite of right livelihood. We may call it wrong livelihood. It strips people of agency. It erodes our attentiveness, our relationality, our embodied life, and widens the crack, not to let any light in, but deepen division. So how to fix this kind of malign, parasitic AI systems? Right now, many people talk about human in the loop. But to me, human in the loop of AI has the feeling of a hamster in a wheel. The hamster just keeps running faster, exercising, an illusion of engagement. But actually, the hamster has zero control over where the hamster wheel is heading. And in fact, it's not heading anywhere. And so this human in the loop of AI, I think, poses the critical question. It's not about whether we should accelerate AI or we should pause AI, control AI, stop AI. The critical question is, how should we steer AI? I believe we must take control of the steering wheel and move from human in the loop of AI into AI in the loop of humanity. Thank you. So, in a nutshell, it means switching away from using AI as addictive intelligence to keep us doom scrolling and start using it as assistive intelligence designed to help us listen to one another. And this is right livelihood for the technological age, engaging responsibly with the tech ecosystem, discerning how our work shape the future minds, cultures, and institutions, and ensure technology supports, not erodes, human dignity. Now, in Taiwan, we have a very unique array of environmental, geopolitical, and social pressures to make us very good listeners and overcoming polarization, because we enjoy, for the past 12 years, the top in the world polarization attacks from foreign interference. We enjoy 2 million cyber attack attempts every day. Here you have to pay for penetration testing. In Taiwan, we get that for free. And so we adapted, and then we evolved into what I call a geothermal way of facing conflicts. As some of you know, Taiwan is the youngest tectonic island in the world, only 4 million years old. And we see the conflicts not as volcano from which to retreat, but rather listening deeply to the earth in a social fabric sense, we can convert the heat into powerful co-creative energy for renewal. And so the anti-social corner of social media can be built into pro-social architecture. And so instead of a destructive fire to be extinguished, we can transform the plate against plate collision so that Taiwan rises ever skyward and starward. So the main algorithm here is called uncommon ground. It goes like this. 10 years ago, as an example, ride-sharing services like Uber came to Taiwan, as it did elsewhere in the world, and it triggered intense conflict between taxi drivers and Uber drivers, the unions, the sharing economy endorsers, the protesters against extractive gig economy, the whole spectrum. So the online debate was very toxic because you see people arguing, and then you see a quote tweet or called a dunk, and then people start attacking each other, and another dunk, and then people become very, very polarized. So instead of getting people lost their minds on anti-social media, we built a pro-social media. And the technology is called Polis, P-O-L-I-S. It's a digital space designed to listen and see each other's feelings. And crucially, there is no retweet button and no reply button either. So there's no room for trolls to grow. There's no way to dunk on someone just to get some points. And as you participate, you see one feeling from a fellow citizen. For example, they feel that undercutting meters is not fair, but making the search pricing higher is quite fair. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree, and you press like or unlike or pass. And as you do so, you see your avatar moving toward a cluster of people who feel similarly to you. But then the other feature, we have a scoreboard that shows the leaders that can propose the bridging statements that make the two cluster of people who otherwise never agree start agreeing. And so people start competing to build longer and longer bridges. So not the left wing, not the right wing, the up wing began to form after 3 weeks of online conversation. And then we mapped where people do agree, and turned out we do agree on most of the things. The polarization was just an illusion. The real issue was just the high PPM make it very difficult for us to see through. So we transformed that very intense conflict into a coherent set of law that the majority can live with. And this uncommon ground system is now in wide use globally. If you have used community notes on X.com, on YouTube, on Facebook, and so on, this is the same idea, the bridging instance. And then we can also use this to solve issues that are more recent and even more insidious. Another example. Last year, Taiwan faced a wave of AI-powered deepfake scam. You would open Facebook or YouTube, social media, and see advertisement featuring the famous CEO, like Jensen Huang of NVIDIA, offering free investment advice or free cryptocurrency. You click, and it looks just like him, and he talks to you. It sounds just like him. It's most definitely not him. It's a deepfake clone of him running on NVIDIA GPU. And so we need a solution to that. But being the most free country in Asia when it comes to internet freedom also means if you ask people, they say we cannot censor speech. What to do? So we turned to the people. We sent 200,000 text messages to random numbers around Taiwan asking only, how can we solve this issue together? And they gave us many good ideas, and thousands volunteered. We chose a statistically representative microcosm representing the population. And the mini public met online in an alignment assembly using AI as assistive intelligence. In rooms of 10, each person looking at 9 other people, 45 rooms, the ideas start getting weaved by small language models. A process usually would take human facilitator a week. They came up with brilliant solutions. For example, one room says, look at each advertisement and on social media by default, display a prominent label that says probably scam to every advertisement, like cigarette labels. And then if somebody, like Jensen Huang, digitally signs off on it, become accountable to it, then you take that label off. Very good idea. Another room says, if a social media push an unsolicited advertisement on investment scam to me, I didn't subscribe, and then I lose $7 million to that unsigned advertisement, then the social media needs to be liable for the full $7 million damage because after all, I did not subscribe to it. Another very good idea. And another room says there's certain foreign, I'll just say the name, TikTok, at the time, that did not have a legal office in Taiwan. And so if we assign liability, they could just ignore us, what to do. And this room says, for every day they ignore us, let's slow down connection to their video by 1%. Throttling, not censoring. And it's just to make sure that they pay attention to our legal system. And so within a day, the same day, a small language model wove all those ideas together into a coherent bundle. And then we put it to a vote. At the end of the day, more than 85% of people, a microcosm, voted yes, this is a very good package. And the other 15% said, at least we can live with it. We consider this legitimate. And so we did not just read the air or try to guess what the social norms are around. We wrote the air together, ensuring everybody shared the common knowledge that everybody else, all their neighbors, are all okay with this bundle of proportionate response. And so that was last March. And by May, we pushed out the 2 laws crowdsourced. By July, it's all passed. And so throughout this year, it's been an entire year. There's just no deepfake scams anymore on social media advertisement. And so this is the geothermal engine in action. It demonstrates that we can use AI as It demonstrates we can use AI as assistive intelligence so that the collective intelligence can draw the red lines around AI as addictive intelligence. So for this vision to thrive, the system that I just described requires to be open and also locally governed. We cannot build those societal bridges on closed, proprietary, colonizing infrastructure. So we must resist digital colonialism. And this requires what I call freedom architecture. The current digital landscape, as many of you know, do not offer freedom of movement. We're like drivers on the information superhighway of social media with no off-ramp and on-ramp. So think about it. A highway with no off and on-ramp is a hamster wheel. Once you get on, there's no way to get off. Otherwise, you lose your relationships, your connections, your communities. So we need protocols of off-ramp and on-ramp for freedom of movement. Think about how you keep your phone number when you switch from one telecom provider to the other. This is called number portability. We need the same for our digital lives, with social media, with AI, with all the platforms. Now, policy is catching up. Europe is leading the way. The Data Act gives us data portability. Digital Markets Act promotes interoperability for instant messaging. And so this spirit enables us to exit a platform with some of our data. But when the exit is real and includes like the social graph, then the platform must compete on care, not on capture. So I encourage those of you who work in engineering, in law, to think in terms of fundamental freedoms of movement, of association, and all the human rights on the digital space. And so this process of rejuvenation in Taiwan begins because we, in 2019, changed our curriculum. And so all of those ideas came from the citizenry, and many of them starting in schools, even before they turn 18. We see this process as like working out in a civic gym, where the gyms are schools, literally gymnasiums. Since 2019, we changed our basic education curriculum. We switched from what's called literacy, which is about taking information, critical thinking, into competency, which is about producing information and knowledge together. Because the top-down journalistic fact-checking does not really inoculate people against a high PPM. But the ability to do peer-to-peer collaboration on fact-checking, verifying sources, balancing coverage, producing contextualized narratives, making real-time corrections during presidential candidate debates, our middle schoolers, once they do that, they cut through the high PPM environment. According to the International Civic and Citizenship Education Study, by 2022, Taiwan's 14-year-olds ranked at the world's top when it comes to civic knowledge, the civic muscle, the capacity for public engagement. And so this means that the democracy of Taiwan is in very good hands because our 14-year-olds already feel their hands are on the steering wheel. And when we make sure that the elderly people listen to the lesson of the civic gym, not from the government, but from their grandchildren, they actually strengthen their civic muscle too. The most active segments in our public participation platform are the 17-year-olds and the 70-year-olds. The intergenerational unity is just awesome. And granted, they have more time on their hands, but also they care more about the future. And so there is now a temptation in the research community to automate some of that alignment assembly civic gym. Specifically, there are software called the Habermas machine. It's a real software. And that can interview people individually and build digital twin of these people. And then in silico, that means in simulation, these digital twins start deliberating in a discursive democracy. It's very good. It produces extremely good policies. But if we just rely on delegating our deliberation to the robots, it's exactly like sending our robots to the gym to lift the weights for us. I'm sure they're very impressive. They can lift a lot of weight. But what is the point? So we cannot delegate democracy. We need to be part of the civic gym. We need to ensure that our schools, the civic gyms, continue to train our civic muscles. We need to ensure that we research and develop the tools for digital democracy and develop the ethical frameworks that guide our technology. We must move beyond the Max OS toward the ethic of care. So in Oxford, I'm developing the six-pack of care, muscle, and also portable. So this is called alignment to a process of relational alignment. So the process of care, as the ethics of care says, should maximize not engagement, but the relational health, mutual trust, and inclusion. And so here we return to right livelihood, not as a virtue for an individual, but something that the cultivated society can see as the civic virtue of the entire communities. This is why I call techno-communitarianism, technology to foster the ability for communities to integrate their own interpretation of ethics and contemplative practice through policy that protect human and ecological well-being, and this is aligned with many wisdom traditions, those institutions that nourish compassion and engagement. And so I think the future is rooted in this attentiveness, this care, this presence, where right livelihood emerge from a symbiogenesis of communities with other communities. We can build the local AI systems that take the local community norm, for example, one around climate justice for specific communities. And another community can train an AI system to attend to the biblical creation care. And we have worked to build social translation systems so that the machine can talk to this group of people and showing that that group of people is also doing God's work. And this is an amplification for the broad listening technique that have shown its practice and effectiveness in Taiwan. Now, many people are looking for super intelligence to be built in some lab somewhere. But I think the future of intelligence is not a machine waiting to be invented. It is us, our augmented collective intelligence. It is our capacity to coordinate with care. We, the people, are the true superintelligence. And remember, positive vision brings positive action. In the greatest adversity lies the greatest potential for doing good, both for oneself and the others. So the adversity is here, and so is our capacity to care. AI must not divide us with outrage. It must connect us through uncommon ground. And so in closing, I offer a poem, a prayer, a vision for us working together. When I first became Taiwan's digital minister in 2016, I noted that in Taiwanese Mandarin, 数位 means both digital and plural. So I wrote my own job description that remains my mantra to this day. It goes like this. When we see Internet of Things, let's make it an Internet of beings. When we see virtual reality, let's make it a shared reality. When we see machine learning, let's make it collaborative learning. When we see user experience, let's make it about human experience. And whenever we hear that a singularity is near, let's always remember the plurality is here. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
After a fantastic speech by Audrey, we all now looking forward to learning more about Audrey's mind-changing work. I would like now to give the floor to Adrienne Fichter from the Republic. Even so, I don't need to introduce Adrienne to the most of you. I would like to emphasize that the political scientist was honored as Swiss Investigative Journalist of the Year 2020, 2021, and 24. She's also the co-founder and community manager of the web startup Politnetz, which also won several awards. In 2020, she published the book Das Netz ist politisch, The Internet is Political, Part 1. We cannot imagine anyone better suited to conduct the interview with Audrey. Welcome, Adrienne, and thank you so much for being here tonight.
Now? Yes. Thank you so much for this introduction. First time here in the front, not as a student here in the row, also as a student from Miss Professor Krüger. Wow. Yeah, there's so many aspects you said in your admirable speech. I want to discuss like AI regulation, polarization attacks, cyber attacks, and actually, if I would ask them all, we probably need 60 minutes, which would end up in a long read piece for Republic, one of the commons, but we will focus, and let's see where we get. But let's first start with also a personal note about the first time I heard about Taiwan and the tool police. That was in 2017. Was really one of my defining, eye-opening moments in my career as a tech journalist when I heard about police and also the movement Gov0 and everything what Taiwan is doing. And then I realized, wow, so digitalization of democracy can be a good thing. Because by now and back then, when you think about digital democracy, we think about all these platforms, as you said, designing, maximizing attention, engagement, polarization, causing disinformation, deepfakes, and also contributing to the rise of populism. But then I heard about Taiwan and about police, and I got a video call with someone who developed police, Colin McGill. He told me about that. And I also wrote then in my first book I co-authored, Smartphone Democracy, about this case. And he showed me this live demo, and it was really astonishing. As you said, he showed me this example of, do we want to have Uber in Taiwan or not, as you said, the example of ride sharing. And it was really stunning. Then I saw this plurality of opinions clustering, and how these clusters are connected and where are the bridges. So it really shows this plurality of opinions. And also, as you said, there was no reply field to avoid the troll comments. So my conclusion was, so I said a long introduction, my conclusion was then it's really all about the design of technology at the end, the political design. Would you agree on that, or is it too easy to say that?
Yes. It is, in fact, we've discovered again and again, it requires two essential ingredients. One, you need a pro-social design space where people add to each other instead of distract from each other. And second, you also need air cover, the pre-commitment from the committed listeners, that if our people really do agree on like everything, or at least broadly agree on everything, then we commit to implement that particular everything. And the two feed onto each other, because to give no trust is to get no trust. So it's always easier to start in the gym, to try a local issue first, a hyper-local issue first, and then to start building the trust by offering more pre-commitment in more larger pro-social spaces that invites more pre-commitments and air cover, so on and so forth.
And you said once you brought up another example in the interview about it was one of the topics was, should Taiwan change its time zone? Did you also discuss that on Police then, or on the platform?
Yeah, it was on the Join platform, which was built after the VTaiwan platform as an institutionalized national participation platform that reaches, I think, 10 million people of our 24 million people country. So it's a pretty wide platform. And anybody with 5,000 signatures, e-petition, can force a conversation, a response from a minister. But this particular case is different because it was actually two petitions. One, more than 8,000 people strong, says let's change Taiwan's time zone to that of +9, the same as Japan. And another 8,000 people strong says let's remain in UTC +8. So it's actually much more. It's 16,000 people or more. And we invited the people who comment on Join, which use the same design. No reply button. You can like, you can unlike. There's two columns, one for the best supporting argument, one for the best contra argument. And then we invite the people who propose the best of those two ideas to the in-person conversation. And it turned out they agreed far more than they disagreed, because we showed them on the matter-of-fact level how much it would cost to impose such a time zone change, both one-time and recurring. And then we start brainstorming. If we're about to spend this much money, are there better ways to achieve your common value? Turns out their common value is to let Taiwan be seen as more unique in the world. But forcing someone to change their clock, okay, I guess it's somewhat unique, but it gets old very quickly. And so we brainstormed better ways, and we did come up with better ways. For example, hosting human rights conferences like RightsCon, giving a gold card residency to people who contribute to open source, open science, and open access. We did that too. We advertised the way that we built our measure equality by using uncommon ground, so that the individual wed as individual, but their family don't form kinship. And we made sure the world learns about that first in Asia and so on. So we ended up saving taxpayer money, but achieving the Let Taiwan to be seen, which is a more common, uncommon ground for both sides.
So good. So in Switzerland, we think that digital democracy equals internet voting and equals e-collecting, the collection of signatures for initiatives and referendums. And we think that's enough, and it's kind of perfect this way. But yeah, but the question is, we don't have this digital infrastructure for deliberation or agenda setting to shape opinions. How would you convince Swiss people, like, oh, maybe you can improve a bit on your democracy by having less polarized opinions in the parliament, or already do the deliberation of stage before?
Well, I'm sure you already have surveys, that's to say polls, and institutional media that runs such poll results. So in a sense, our way, the alignment assembly, from one side, it looks like a Bürgerrat, a citizen assembly, but on the other side, it looks like a poll. So you can actually think of it not as deliberation, but rather as a survey. The survey is not individual, but groups of 10. It's as this simple. Because if you individually survey people, they tend to be on extreme. They're like, YIMBY, yes, in my backyard. NIMBY, never, in my backyard. But if you say to a group of 10, only the idea that resonates in the room has a chance to pass out of the room, to go out, cross-pollinate in the room. Everybody become MIMBY, maybe in my backyard. If you do this, if you do that. Right? So again, it's a function of the space, not a function of the people. But if you publish the result of such a deliberative poll, it looks exactly like a regular poll. And so all the existing ways you integrate polls into your democracy still functions. So the point here is not to reinvent some wild new form of digital democracy. It is to ensure that we can come to see each other on overlap, not on outrage, using pro-social design.
But still, I mean, our main digital communication infrastructure is provided here in Europe and possibly everywhere globally, provided by some American big tech companies. Since already 30 years, where we pay with our data and so on and so on. So how can Europe be motivated, or what could be the incentives to design and create a market for such technologies, promoting trust and also promoting consensus, and also showing the plurality of opinion as a chance, as something good? How can we get there to create this market in Europe? Where should we start?
Well, first of all, I use Proton, which last I check is based here, not some digital colonialism. And there are many platforms like this. Proton is also Taiwanese funded, so I have a special affinity. But there are people who build such alternatives, but really struggle to solve the problem called the code bootstrap, because most people are trapped on those large platforms already. There was a study a couple of years ago to the US average undergrad person using TikTok. And if you want to convince them to quit TikTok, you have to pay them money. Turns out, on average, you have to pay them $60 a month for them to quit using TikTok. They're that addicted. However, if there is a magic button you can press, and everybody they know also move off TikTok together, they're willing to pay you $30 per month for that to happen. So it's a trap, literally a product market trap, because everybody is losing utility. But the first one to move out, because the community is held hostage, they lose even more utility, so nobody wants to move out. Which is why we work, for example, through the Project Liberty Institute with Governor Cox in the state of Utah in the US. They passed this year the Digital Choices Act, starting next July if you're a Utah citizen, and you migrate from TikTok to, say, Blue Sky or Truth Social, both are open source. The old network is required to forward new like, new reaction, new follower to the new network, just like network portability of telecom numbers. And so you can think of this as the individual moving on the off-ramp, but still keeping their community with it, and it forces them to then compete on the quality of care. And I have every belief that it is then the open source, open participation platform that will win this race to the top, not to the bottom of the brainstem.
But the same thing Europe is trying too, no? Like with the Digital Market Act, having interoperability, and then having the possibility that a WhatsApp user can communicate with a Signal user, yes. But that doesn't happen. I mean...
Well, I mean, there are two differences. One, the EU is doing another round of consultation to expand the instant message, include group messaging, to social networks. So that's the main difference. The other is that the Utah law applies to all social media, not just the very large social media. So it gives everybody a real incentive to build on the infrastructural layer, on the protocol layer, instead of on the platform layer, and just hope that you don't reach the very large operator status.
Okay. So you're a cyber ambassador promoting this model of digital democracy to the rest of the world. But I was wondering, when I'm reading your interviews and also the book Plurality, I was wondering, doesn't this require something specific? Like, is there not a strong cultural component in the Taiwanese digital democracy model, such like it requires specific skills from citizens, tech sophistication, tech savviness, a strong sense for the community, and also requires an incredible amount of, as you said, some young people and some older people who have free time to participate online. So I thought, like, isn't it something which is really, like, do you think it will work somewhere else too? Because the level of tech sophistication is maybe not that high in other countries.
Yeah, well, many countries, especially the European ones, under what the OECD called the deliberation wave, the LIB wave, already have alignment assemblies, citizen assemblies, and so on the local level. This is not unheard of, in fact, quite common if you talk about the neighborhood level or the district level of things. What Taiwan did was essentially using digital tools so that it works on the national level. So for a very long time, we're the largest country, 24 million, where the system is done as an infrastructure. But that was only true till last year. Because this year, many other polities larger than Taiwan are now building this as infrastructure. For example, I worked for the past couple of years with Governor Gavin Newsom of California and his first partner, Jennifer, to work on a Engaged California platform at engaged.ca.gov. Initially, we built this to have a conversation with teenagers and even younger children on social media usage, because it's a classic case of something about them without them. And so we want to include them and their parents. But on the week of launch, we did not get to launch because wildfire happens in Los Angeles. So we pivoted instantly to have a conversation using bridging algorithm for the survivors of the Eaton and Palisade fire to talk about how to mitigate and prevent future wildfire. And it produced, you can check the report online, very good uncommon ground, surprising common ground around all the different measures that the state government can take. And encouraged by this experience, they're now writing it into law so that it become a state-level infrastructure, and they're consulting also the internal state employee so that they can suggest better ways to use AI in their line of work. So it's like a government efficiency, like Doge, but bottom-up, not top-down.
The better one. So this is going to be now performed, executed in California right now.
Yes, and we also have Japan joining the ranks. It used to be in the Tokyo metropolitan area. I've worked for many years now with Governor Koike-san to run the Governor's Cup Hackathon, which is modeled after the Taiwanese presidential hackathon. And one of the very young people reading the Plurality book, Takahiro Ano-san, 33-year-old at the time, last year, a sci-fi writer, AI engineer, decide after reading the book to run for governor, to put this platform into work. But he did not have a platform for the election. And so he crowdsourced his platform, saying anybody hashtagging Tokyo AI can be part of Ano's platform. And so he used exactly the same tools, Polis, Talk to the City, and so on. And 1 month before the governor election, he launched it, and by the election day, independently, the think tank ranked his crowdsourced platform the best, even better than Koike's. But of course, Koike won the re-election, but Ano-san got more than 1% of votes. And then Koike-san invited him to do the Tokyo City consultation for Tokyo 2050. And then he formed a new party, the Team Mirai Future Party. And with 2.5% of write-in votes for his new party, he is now a House of Council member, a senator in the Japanese Diet, and putting this digital democracy again at the national infrastructure level. So Japan and California, last I checked, are both much larger than Taiwan. So we're no longer the largest polity with digital participation infrastructure.
Okay. So, but I still have some doubts about like this willingness of being permanently involved, like discussing this deep level online on a permanent level, like from the young people, for example. So, I mean, it's hard to imagine that the AI assemblies you mentioned, that would be something very interesting also here, because we start to do the AI regulation process, policy process as well. The AI Act is being implemented on the EU level as well. So are young people really willing to discuss how artificial intelligence should be regulated?
Yeah, definitely. And Finland just ran one, I think, this September. What do you think Finland, when it comes to AI, again, using the Polis technology for sense making? I think young people, by and large, feel that the AI systems is out of their control, like it is somewhere else. So if the tech oligarchy decides to steer the AI system towards some other future, sacrificing the young people really want to take the steering wheel back. And so I think the key here, again, is air cover, is commitment. When people know that whatever they do agree on will be treated as real red lines by the Minister of Digital Affairs at the time, yours truly, then people really pour in with the most nuanced, most considerate ideas. So again, pro-social design is the first step, and then you have to offer the air cover.
Okay. So right now, speaking of AI regulation again, how does it look in Taiwan? Is it about you're defining now also design principles about how this technology or large language models should be designed in the law? Is it like you define? It's not a technological neutral way, as we say in Switzerland. You define the design principles.
Yeah, our AI Basic Act is on its way to the final reading. So fingers crossed, I think it's down to the last clause. I think the negotiation throughout the AI Act conversation in Taiwan put an emphasis on interoperability, data innovation, data reuse, and things like that. I think because Taiwanese people really do like this vision of personal computing, because we made many of those PC compatibles back in the 80s. And it was a very different era, of course, but I was born in a place that basically fostered this counter-cultural thinking that you do not need to rely on a mainframe computer so the big state or big corporation monitor every key you press into your terminal, which is a fancy way to connect to the cloud back then. We want personal computing, which means you can install your own spreadsheets, your own desktop publishing, you can share your fixes, your patches to the software called Apache, and then form this movement together of free and open source software. And so without personal computing, there's probably no FOSS movement. These two work hand in hand. And so nowadays, we're already looking at energy-efficient small language model, such as the ones that Taiwan National Development Fund invests in. We invest in more than 100 such models, some of them so energy efficient that it's not using the transformer architecture. It uses a retention network, power retention, and so on, so that it can run on your Swiss watch. It uses a constant memory, but it's still top of the world when it comes to performance on inference. But this is not a tech seminar, so I will stop here. But this is a topic that I'm deeply compassionate and passionate in.
In another interview, we're going to catch there up. You told me in a preparation talk, like, when I thought about what can we learn in Switzerland, you told me, like, okay, you have the half direct democracy, but you also have sometimes on public votes slight majorities of 51% or like 49% no. That would be not enough in Taiwan. You really aim for having 80%, like also for the AI regulation law you're gonna, which is gonna pass these days. It should be at the end a minimum of 80%.
Yeah, people can live with it, which is much easier to achieve than complete consensus, which only ensure that the people with the most time wins, because it's endless negotiation. but if you only ask, can you live with it, you can very quickly get a snapshot, like a group selfie. And then you pass it. And of course, there's some unintended consequences, but that's fine. You just take another group selfie. and then if you take group selfie quick enough, it becomes a selfie movie. And so that is how the people see themselves reflected, because there's nothing that's more powerful than your few words written on Polis, on joint platform, and the next week become policy. It is actually very much empowering for people younger than 18 to see their names on the credit list for national level debates and policy making and so on. And then they put much more time into the steering wheel, not the hamster wheel.
Very good. Let's talk about some challenges you're facing of the friendly neighbor.
Yeah, free pen testing. You don't get that anywhere else.
Yeah, well, save money there. You told me you don't like the word disinformation campaigns. You prefer this polarization attacks, which is something Switzerland and Europe and every country else is facing too, like being constantly in this hybrid war all the time. How can we achieve this digital resilience towards deepfake and disinformation? I will use it now, and polarization as well, because we also have some neighbors, maybe not that close, but some friendly ones.
Okay, they're widening their free service now. Yes.
It's also for free, they're campaigning.
I mean, it's because of language models. It used to be that you have to speak the target language to successfully mount an attack. But now malicious AI swarm speak that language so well. Even the memes, that's to say pictures, can be translated perfectly into any target culture. So it does widen the aperture for the polarization and disinformation attacks. In Taiwan, we basically invite these as topic for conversation, social objects. We pre-bunk instead of debunk messages. Debunking is after the fact, and it's bound to polarize some people if you debunk.
And you created a deepfake first of yourself.
Yes, I deepfaked
to show
myself.
What deepfakes are.
Yes. So around 3 years ago, an actor played me in a deepfake. And it was kind of a fake deepfake because it took a lot of computation actually to calculate that. But we say that in the future, this will take not 12 hours, but 12 seconds to deepfake me completely. And maybe 12 milliseconds, in which case you cannot tell whether somebody having a video conference with you is human or not. And we say to the people, this is coming, and the deepfake Audrey Tang says, shift from the content level, where you basically assume anything can be synthetic, to the behavior level and the actor level, to ensure there's digital signature, to look for behavioral patterns, for example, disclosing where this message is coming from. We embrace the idea of meronymity, or partial anonymity. So it's not everybody signed their name on their message, which is very bad for whistleblowers, doxing them, but it's also not complete anonymity, because our constitution never offered freedom of expression and amplification for foreign robots. And so at least you need to disclose that you are a human and the region where you connect from. And so all these meronymity, all this selective disclosure, so you can prove that ich bin ein Berliner without revealing your street address in Berlin, for example. All these are fundamental infrastructures that taken together offer a very strong pre-bunking infrastructure instead of debunking.
And how fast should be this pre-bunking, or when you or debunking when you see there's something coming up? I saw something within 2 hours. That's Taiwan reaction time.
We upgrade that to 1 hour.
Wow.
Yeah. So we have this 2-2-2 principle. Whenever the citizens, through the collaborative fact-checking grassroots network COFAX, detect that there is a viral polarization or disinformation attack, then within 2 hours, we need to roll out 2 minutes of video or 2 pictures of 200 characters or less each that is funnier than the disinformation. It's called humor over rumor. Because if it's funny, it travels faster than outrage. And if you roll it out within the 2 hours, You can do a tenet move and pretend you're doing pre-bunking. Because for most people, this pincer attack means that they see the polarization after they see the humor. Right? So for them, it's pre-bunking, subjectively speaking. Right? But if you act after 2 hours, it's too late.
Okay. And you said so you force those platforms like Facebook and YouTube to collaborate on this selective disclosure and in the fight against scam and fraud and everything. And if they don't, the sanction is slowing down
to
their
slowly
services.
slow down their connections.
And they cooperate.
Of course.
Have you said that to the EU Commission, for example?
Well,
recipe?
I mean, radical interoperability and throttling is not stifling innovation, last I checked. It is not censorship of content, last I checked. Last I checked, the state of Utah is conservative, last I checked. And so this is not something that is progressive versus conservative, not something liberal versus the right. This is something about our fundamental freedom to move across services, so the best service gets our business. I think this is a very strong argument, and I have not heard from any MP here in MEPs to say that, oh, I'm pro-fraud, so I don't want this kind of measure, right? So I think the anti-fraud angle is definitely the uncommon ground, the surprising common ground that can unite the left wing and the right wing into the upper wing.
Okay, so it's a way to enforce also legal framework. Speaking of frameworks, in the EU, there's this shift in the public discourse on the narrative about regulation. Like, regulation is hampering innovation. So we need to get back our digital sovereignty. We need to build our tech companies. We need to invest in our tech companies. We need to have less rules. Do you think, like, when I hear what you're saying, it's actually not this way, because it's all about protocols and standards.
I think I pre-bunked that question.
You pre-bunked that, actually, yeah. So can take this off. So frameworks like GDPR, Digital Services Act, Digital Market Act, are they obstacles on our digital sovereignty?
I think the difference between a guardrail that stifles innovation and a protocol that fosters healthy competition and innovation is that the protocol must always come with not just a guardrail against something, but a guide rail, an alternative. As we are the Nobel for alternatives, I heard, the Right Livelihood Award, the idea is to come up with something on a small scale that actually works. So, for example, I'm working with a team to build this pro-social ranking algorithm that can bridge Truth Social and Blue Sky together. The example I use on stage is called Green Earth. Because blue sky, green earth. Right. And green earth uses language models, so you can tell it, I prefer biblical creation care, or I prefer climate justice framework, and so on. And then it figure out the connective tissue for the ranking system to be maximally bridging. And once we have that good alternative running on blue sky, actually it pressure X and other social media companies, because if they don't adapt and the policymaker understand there are viable alternatives, then they can set the floor at those alternatives, making it impossible for the big tech not to adopt such open source initiatives. So it's like forking the platforms into protocols and then forcing them to merge back.
And you have this conversation with Blue Sky now to enforce this interoperability.
Well, Blue Sky was designed around
decentralized.
Yeah. It's the AT protocol,
sure.
Right? So the AT protocol can federate with the Fediverse, with Nostr, Farcaster, Lens. I'm missing a few, but it's all the big interoperable web. Mm-hmm. And the lesson here is not that we need a Euro champion that replace those colonizers, but rather we need a Euro stack that is decentralized and democratic, and so that we can defend democracy by saying, once you're in Europe, you need to be like utilities, at least offering off-ramp and on-ramp.
Okay, so if the pressure from the EU Commission is not working, then at least you contributed then to this openness and plurality of technologies. Exactly. The very last question. In the book Plurality, you criticized how Western democracies have failed in the past to provide digital services. And I was immediately thinking of the pandemic, how European countries or the US and other countries have managed the COVID-19 monitoring by sometimes the fax machine, using the fax machine. What were you thinking when you heard that? And what should be the core infrastructure from a modern government to be prepared for the next pandemic?
Well, for Taiwan, COVID-19 was the second pandemic. We were hit by SARS the most, suffered the most of all countries when SARS happened. And when SARS happened, our health card was literally a piece of paper with 6 boxes on it. So you can stamp the date you enter a clinic. So it's worse than the fax machine, speaking from first-hand experience. And it really is the case in Taiwan that because of the SARS experience, it propelled us to adopt the Central Epidemic Command Center and the digitalization of our public health system and investing in contact tracing, vaccination, mask rationing, and so on and so forth. And so I believe that in Taiwan, we've had years of citizen assemblies and also online polis conversations about exactly the boundary to draw between, say, public health and privacy. And we did that before the community spread in Taiwan. So when the community spread did come in Taiwan, we know exactly what to do. The civic activists invented a zero knowledge, meaning it doesn't learn anything. When you check in a venue using an SMS QR code, the venue owner learns nothing about you, not even your phone number. Your telecom only learn a random number. They don't know which venue it corresponds to. The state learns nothing after 14 days where it's erased. But it does let us recursively notify people when they were in places that had community spread, and it's entirely voluntary. However, it served us very well until the first wave of Omicron. So I think it is in these non-crucial times, in these more chronic times, that you have this national conversation, maybe with some alignment assemblies, around these very important boundaries, the red lines to draw. And once the pandemic or some other disaster happens, then the red lines become also the bright arrows to point out the kind of solution using technology of that day and age that we already know the pre-commitment of the people, the legitimacy of the people.
Yeah, we should have had this famous mask app where you can see the availability of masks in all the pharmacies. Also here, maybe for the next pandemic. Yeah, I think we need to make a point here. I'm sure we could continue this conversation for ages. You promised me to tell an advertising slogan at the end. You remember? It was not humor about rumor. It was something about let's make. Yes. If you want. No, it's let's make
free the future.
Let's make digital democracy great again.
Yes.
That was your idea.
Make digital democracy great again. Thank you.